Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA Draft and the Motor City Cruise.
And of course, guys, if you're tuning in live, we appreciate it. Thank you as always for tuning in, asking the questions. We will be, of course, getting to as many of them as we possibly can. I just put that out there in the chat. So ask away in the live comments. We did get quite a few pre-submitted as well. Actually, it's always kind of fun when our mailbag queue turns into just a conversation on Detroit Bad Boys. I love when that happens. It's usually more in the downtime of year, right? And this week obviously we haven't had any Pistons game, any Pistons basketball. We are recording on a Thursday night. Okay. So we will not be able to talk about the Pistons game on Friday. And I believe that got maybe slightly more winnable here. They're playing the Spurs, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So unfortunately that got slightly more winnable. We'll talk about that. We got a few Wemby questions here that we'll get to. But first, I want to throw back out that we do have that voice line. Okay, we do have the Google voice line that you guys can call, leave a message for us, and we'll play it out on the show and we'll answer it. That way you guys can actually hear your voice on the podcast with us. We haven't got one of those in a while. It's one of my favorite aspects that we have on the show. So hope you guys give it a call, ask us some questions. It's 313-355-2717, and find a little bit of housekeeping. Give us the like, subscribe, all that stuff. It really does help, and we appreciate it.
Crushed it there. Yeah, the voice line's great. Always feel free to give us a call and leave us voicemail there. Those are super fun. It helps us make sure we don't get anything lost in translation with all the questions.
Yeah.
And adds a little bit of interactivity too, which is always fun. I mean, I'm sure we'll get it going as we have this like playoff or postseason stretch, whatever it's gonna turn into coming here. But yeah, always feel free to give us a shout and we'll play your question on the air.
Yep, just try to keep it short. Don't go on for like 10 minutes. We both ramble on long enough for all of us. We
you can vent. We might just not play the whole thing. Yeah. We'll listen to it, though.
Yeah, we'll always listen. Ears are open. Mailbag, voice mailbag in this case, always open. If it gets a little too long, may just not play it. But anyway, Blake, I wanted to open up the show with kind of a weird, maybe off-the-wall question. And you got to keep this, safe for work, that kind of stuff. Okay. So don't go too off the rails, but here's my question. I've been going to a new gym lately. Just it's closer to a place that I've been working more. So it's a new gym for me. And it always cracks me up when you go to the new gym. I don't know if this is true for our female listeners as well, but you go to the men's locker room and like every gym has its weird old men that are doing weird things. Okay. So what is the weirdest thing, safe for work, of course, that you have seen someone do in the men's locker room that just made you go, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
Oh boy. I think can think of a couple quick ones off the bat. I think the weirdest one I've seen is just like, it's not super out there, but I thought it was strange. Just like wearing full clothes in a sauna. Like I've seen people wear like hoodies in there, which I mean, I guess I can get it if you're really trying to get your sweat on and that's it. But the other thing I think is I used to go to a gym where I would go before work in the morning and had a great like shower, get ready, set up. So I would just shower there before I left. And sometimes in the like rush hours, there would be lines. You would have to wait for the shower. And then just sometimes people in line would like yell to the people in the shower, like, hey, we got 5 wait or whatever it is, which wasn't super crazy, but some people could be more aggressive than others. Which I never, I guess, had the confidence to do that, even if I was just like, oh man, someone's taking way too long in the shower there. So I appreciated when people stuck up for those of us in line.
That is fantastic. Funniest one that I've seen now in the new gym is there are a couple of these older guys. This gym has like public blow dryers for your hair. They use the public blow dryers to dry off everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Stand there naked, do it everywhere. And I get it a little bit with the hand dryers, but these are blow dryers that everyone's using for there. But here's where it gets weird. They then use a private changing room to like get dressed. And I just like, they're right by the entrance. They're right by the entrance. People will walk in, you open the door, you could see out into the hallway, and they're just standing there drying themselves out the blue. And then they go in the private room. I don't get that. I don't understand that.
That is weird. That is weird. I mean, some people have no shame, but I don't know. I guess, need your privacy to change. I cannot even make sense of that one, honestly.
You just gotta laugh at that kind of stuff. It's entertaining in the morning when you're done with the workout, getting cleaned up, ready to go back to work. But okay, that digression aside, let's get to a little bit of Pistons stuff. I think you and I both had just a couple of quick takes on the All-Star game. Not too much that either of us could really talk about. Cade played about 5 minutes. He played well, right? Got a poster. That was fun. But other than that, what were some general thoughts you had on the All-Star game and just maybe All-Star weekend in general too?
Yeah, I mean, I think the target score was way too low. It was set at 40, so it kind of made the game seem like they were going a little bit quicker, and then there was more time for breaks and Mr. Beast and whatever else going on than actual basketball. So
what was that Mr. Beast thing, by the way? I actually turned it off when that came on. I won't lie. I saw the Mr. Beast, Damian Lillard 3-point challenge. I said, I have no more interest in any of this tonight. And I put in something else.
Yeah, I wasn't paying too close attention at that point either, but I think it was just like a shooting contest, almost like a game of lightning. And the kid who was competing in it actually won like $100,000, I think it was, which is cool for him. But yeah, overall, I think it was just not a lot of basketball going on in the NBA All-Star game, which is interesting. I know there are some a lot of people didn't like the format. I didn't mind the format. I just thought that the target score might have needed to be higher, and maybe if they stick with this format, you can adjust how the teams are set up. I didn't really know if I know Draymond famously said the Rising Stars team didn't deserve to compete against everyone else, which I get that point. So I wonder if there's a way to shake up the teams a little bit, I don't know, based on nationality or different regions or divisions. I don't know what it is, but I think the NBA will constantly change it just because of how many changes that we've seen. But yeah, this year was pretty underwhelming, I'd say, even though it was a good performance from Cade, even though he wasn't. We didn't see a ton of Cade playing, but when he was out there, he was good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was out there for 5 minutes and he got one poster dunk blocked and then he put another one down. So good for Cade. That's great. Hit a 3-pointer too, threw a couple lobs to Mobley. Good stuff. Good stuff from Cade. I'm with you. There's just not much that we could really talk about. To me, I didn't love the format, but I also don't really care. The NBA just needs to pick something. It feels like we've had a different All-Star game almost every single year for the past 5 years at this point. They just keep changing their path, changing their minds. They're implementing, trying to get charity donations, which is fine if you want to keep doing that. They're doing the picking the teams to try and engage some competitiveness. And that's fine if you want to stick with that, but pick a lane and go with it. Cause at this point, to me, it's just very difficult to get the players to want to play competitively and play really hard in that setting in the middle of the season when they've all got a lot on the line. And the NBA changing what they're doing every dang year just calls more attention to that. So just pick something and go with it. Stop changing it. Just let it be. Live with it as it is. That's my only thought on the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah, I also think that we're probably going to have this discussion every year because I feel like the league is gonna keep making changes, and it's a big thing in the media members who have their thoughts on it, which just incites more and more conversation around it, which makes people not like it. Part of me wonders if we just need to take it for what it is. It's never gonna be crazy good basketball, but it's fun. And also, like these players have a ton of stuff going on that weekend too. Like they're going to all the different events, like media commitments and everything like that too. So I feel like also the players probably just don't want to go out there and like exert a ton of effort, like do what you can to go and like put on a show, but they have the end of their season to get ready for after this long weekend, which is technically a break. Like I'm sure they wanted to have some fun as well on top of all the commitments they have. So I think there's just a lot going on. I don't know what the perfect answer is. I think we're going to keep seeing changes, but I'm just at a point where I'm like, okay, it'll maybe be cool. Maybe I would change this personally, but that's I don't have that power. So enjoy it for what it is and not get super mad about it, I guess.
I think you said it really well right there. Like, if it's not going to be competitive, and look, it doesn't have to be competitive, then let it be fun. So,
Yeah.
my thing, pick something, stick with it, market it, let it be an entertaining bit of basketball, even if it's not competitive. Because just because we grew up when we were very young watching competitive all-star games does not mean that that's the way that it should be. Things can change. It's okay.
Hmm.
It's fine. Just let it be fun then, if that's what this is going to be. Roll with it. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah. The only other quick thing I'll say that is sort of unrelated, but I actually liked the uniforms this year. I thought they were all
I
fine,
did like them.
especially
Yeah.
yeah, especially because they had different so many different like combinations they had to deal with. But I do kind of wish you would just go back to like home and away, like wearing your actual jersey in the All-Star game. That's probably a bit of nostalgia from those All-Star games we had when we were growing up. But I think that would be a cool, like easy thing you could go back to that people might be like, oh yeah, that was a win there.
Yeah, I'd like it. I think that would be cool. But okay, that's enough All-Star talk. It was kind of a wasted weekend for watching basketball, I think. But that's fine. That's fine. Let's get to a couple of actually Wemby questions because we just got the news come out today, yesterday, if you're listening on Friday when this podcast releases, that Victor Wembanyama out for the rest of the year. So obviously, prayers up for him, right? He's got, I believe it was a blood clot in his shoulder. Sounds like that's more of a fluky thing. So, fingers crossed that that's what it is. Obviously, we as Pistons fans, we know a little bit about this problem. Asar just had it last year. So fingers crossed everything's going to go smoothly for Wembanyama. But we had two kind of comments, questions, sort of things about this. So one, Shag says, with Wemby out for the season, this pretty much guarantees that Cooper Flagg is going to play for the Spurs next year, doesn't it? You don't have to answer that exactly, but how nuts would it be if Cooper Flagg played with Wemby?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think this will happen, but yeah, that would be it would be a duo that would be very tough to score on, and then they have like Steph Castle, who's a good perimeter defender too. Like it would be super exciting for sure. I don't think it's gonna happen, but if it does, I would be happy that the Pistons aren't in their conference or division.
Yep, only have to worry about them twice a year, and then a third time if you make it all the way, right? That's great.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. But
Yeah.
agreed. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen. I think Cooper Flagg's looking like a fantastic prospect, looking kind of like the runaway number one, right? Is that fair to say at this point?
Yeah, I've seen like some contrarian takes, but for the most part, I think he's the clear number one this year. I just think the type of like the athleticism, the defensive ability is like the biggest thing with him. But I'd say overall there are some like if you're a Dylan Harper guy, and I wouldn't take Ace Bailey number one, but like those were the two that are we're supposed to like maybe have a say to challenge Cooper Flag at number one, but I think Flag is just the clear number one. I don't see it changing anytime soon. But things can get crazy. But right now, yeah, I'd say Flag. I'd be shocked if he wasn't the number one pick in June.
And it's a really good point because I think back even to the Victor Wembanyama draft. There were good arguments to take Scoot Henderson number one overall. those arguments look very wrong right now, obviously in hindsight, but like in the moment, you've got Victor Wembanyama, looks like a generational can't miss prospect. And even he gets a little bit of a question. Do you take Scoot? Because he's really good too. So, it would make sense that a guy like Cooper Flagg, who as great as he is, not Wemby, right? Not that level of great, that he would have some questions on him too. So here is the real question, maybe from Buzzer Beater. It says, from a Pistons perspective, would you say that Wemby being injured increases Cade Cunningham's chances of being All-NBA third team? Just because him and now so many others as well are going to be ineligible due to that 65 game minimum.
Yeah, honestly, I hope this doesn't make me sound like a bad guy, but this was one of my first thoughts when I saw the news that Wembanyama was going down, is like, there's another guy that's not going to be eligible for All NBA. I mean, I think Cade is pretty firmly in the discussion right now, and obviously you don't want him to go a roundabout way into getting those honors just because there were so many players ineligible. But even if everyone who's ineligible, which the big ones right now look to be Wemby, Luka, maybe AD, depending on how his injury goes, and Embiid as well. So,
You could
I
throw
mean,
Kyrie there too.
yeah. And I mean, I just think no matter what, like injuries aside, Cade has done enough to supplant himself into that conversation. Like maybe it would be a bit closer if everyone was available and eligible for those honors. But I think no matter what, he's done enough to at least have his name in there. And just because of the circumstances and the new rules and the NBA making the All NBA teams position list, I think it has been like a perfect storm, I guess, of getting Cade in there. And even if it is like a little easier to get him above that hump, I think he's completely and 100% deserving of it, no matter what.
What is the quote, Blake? The best availability is, or the best ability is.
Yeah.
Availability. Yeah, that's on me. That's bad podcasting. I ruined the quote. The best ability is availability. So I think the fact that Cade Cunningham is a guy who looks like, knock on wood, that he's going to finish out the season. He's going to make that 65 game mark, that he's surely a top 25 player in the NBA right now, possibly a top 20 player in the NBA right now as a 23-year-old. And he's been able to stay healthy again, knock on wood. Not trying to put any bad vibes out there, but assuming he's able to continue on the path that he's on, I actually think it'd be an upset if he doesn't make at least All NBA third team, with or without Wemby. Like regardless of this news about Victor Wembanyama missing the rest of the year, like he's in the conversation. He would be in the conversation as a top 25, maybe top 20 player, regardless. Even if everyone were healthy right now, he'd still be in that conversation. So I think that, the other injuries, kind of give him a boost, and maybe he reaches the threshold to get the award sooner than perhaps he otherwise would have. But at the end of the day, he also played the whole year. That's not nothing, right? That's important. I think it was actually a good thing that the NBA switched, implemented that rule, I should say. I think that star players are awesome, but the best star players are the ones that play the whole year. Right. So the fact that Cade's on that path now, I don't care that it's a little roundabout. I think I'm very confident at this point that he's at least All NBA third team, and deservingly so, regardless of these injuries.
Yeah. I think, like you said, I thought he was there even before we heard this news. Like, does it take or open up one spot if he is a little bit more on the border than we think? Yes, but I think no matter what, he should be in that conversation, and he's done everything he's needed to do to be in there. And I know that getting All NBA opens up, like, he gets paid a little more, and I know that takes some space away from the Pistons, a little flexibility, but I think it's just pay him as much as you can. Like, for what he's done, he's earned every dollar that he's bound to get. So just have to be happy for him. Like, you have your guy, have some stuff to figure it out around him, but oftentimes that's that's the hardest part. And if you have a 23-year-old all NBA guard who can really do everything and is the best player on the court most nights that you play, like that's really the best case scenario when you selected him number 1 overall.
Almost the definition of first world problems. Oh
Yeah.
no, I got to pay my 23-year-old all NBA guy more money because he made the all NBA team on his rookie deal. Shoot, this is bad. Like, how do you even spin that as a negative?
Yeah.
It's a good thing, no matter
And
how
I think
you
he
slice it.
already can get paid more because he made an all-star team. I need to look into the specifics of that, but that might have been before he signed this previous extension. But yeah, whatever it is, just give it to him.
So continuing on with guys missing games, this is Bobby Portis. He just got suspended for 25 games, and the Beastman 17 wants to know if the 5th seed, maybe even the 4th seed now, is attainable for the Pistons. So the Bucks are sitting at the 5th seed with 29 wins, 24 losses. The Pacers are up at the 4th, 30 wins, 23, and the Pistons are right behind, hot in pursuit, 29 and 26. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's possible, and I think Bobby Portis is great. Like, I'd love him for the Pistons if he was ever available, but I don't like. I'll be interested to watch how the Bucks do without him available for pretty much the rest of the regular season. Since they're neck and neck with the Pistons, I could see them being able to pass the Bucks. But it'll be close, really. And then you have Orlando right behind you in the 7th spot. Like, there aren't a ton of teams behind the Pistons that I see making a huge surge, which makes me think that climbing up even higher, 5th, maybe even 4th, is possible. I'm just not trying to get too greedy, I guess, with how this team has overachieved this whole year. I just think if they continue on this pace, like, you'll firmly be in postseason basketball, which is more than you could have ever have asked for going into this season. So I don't think the Portis injury is really like a game changer in letting the Pistons go up more and climb that ladder. But like, honestly, how they were playing heading into the break and some of the stretches that we've seen them rattle off, I think they might be able to do it no matter what, because they're just a game back of 5th and 2 games back of 4th. Like, you never know. That's not much ground to make up, and both those teams are in your division, so I'd have to check how many times you play each of them again, but there are probably going to be some opportunities to steal some games and make up some ground, like, on one night.
Definitely. Like, look, I'm with you. You know, I don't want to be over optimistic on this. My first thought when I read this question, when Beastman put it in the comment section on DBB, was that I think this is like really good news for the Magic more so than the Pistons. The Magic are a team that I know Detroit's ahead of them right now, but that is a really good team. They were better than they are right now. They were better than this last year. So they've got history of being a very good team. This is one of the best defenses in the NBA. Paulo's great. Franz is great. Yes, they've had injury issues, so maybe they're just kind of getting their feet back under them. I struggle to believe they're going to be a below 500 basketball team for the rest of this season. So to me, like, when I saw the Portis news, I was thinking the Magic are probably extremely excited because now I've already got them kind of marked as, if there's a team that's going to pass Detroit, it's probably them. And now they could reasonably get back ahead of the Bucks as well, which would be obviously good for the Magic, bad for the Pistons if they can't keep that lead. Look, the Pacers too are playing really well, but they're also 7 games over 500 right now. I don't really think they're necessarily reachable. They've been good. They've just been really, really good. They've got tiebreakers over Detroit, I believe, if I remember right. And actually, both the Bucks and the Pacers have better conference records than the Pistons do, which I know is a tiebreaker at one point. I think the Pistons have only beaten either of the Pacers or Bucks once this year, right?
Yeah, I was just looking at the schedule, and the Pistons actually finished this season with two in a row against Milwaukee.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
and yeah, there was that in-season tournament game where they beat the Pacers, and then was there? I think that might have been it. I think the
I
Bucks
think
game
it was it.
there was the Ron Holland game, and then
Yep.
the group stage, and sorry, Ron, don't mean to harp on that, but yeah, so that was it. They haven't beat the Bucks yet, and then just have those couple opportunities to round out the regular season, which you never know; those could be really big games.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say because I know that the division tiebreaker is really important. They've already lost that to the Pacers, and they need to beat the Bucks twice to tie them, right at the end of the season in terms of head to head within that division. So they're not in a great spot because they'd have to not
Yeah,
only make up a decent amount of ground to catch either of those teams. I know it's just one win at the moment, but to get to the Bucks, but still.
hmm
I just you got to exceed them. You can't tie them. You got to exceed both these teams on record. The Pistons are already overperforming so much. Long story short, I'm right there with you. I think we're happy with what we've been getting from Detroit. My goal, my hope for this team is that they can finish the year on the pace they've been on. So get to 40 wins, right? Stay 500, maybe even one or two games above. That would be fantastic. Right now, my guess is that that's the sixth or seventh seed, just kind of based on the teams that are hovering right around that mark at the moment. But anything could happen. So I don't want to rule it out. I'm just not banking on it.
yeah, and honestly, like I even if you drop down to seventh, like I don't think that's a disappointment at all. Like I know you want to get into the top six, but at seventh, you get a home game, and then you get two opportunities to go. Like you just need to win one to get to a playoff series, whereas the 9 and 10 seeds are more like working your way up. So, and all the teams in that range, I think it'll obviously be a different atmosphere, and it's not something that the Pistons have experienced before. However, you want to add in those like in-season tournament games that they played that are really big. So you never know what could happen. But I think even if they drop somewhere to seventh or even eighth, I think that's still like it wouldn't be a disappointment to me.
I agree. The play in doesn't scare me. Actually, in a couple ways, it excites me. I think it
Yeah.
would be really good for this team to have, like you said, two chances to win one game, and then you make the playoffs. Right? That
hmm
would be high pressure, high leverage situation. Great for a really young team. And then as a secondary thing, this is more selfish for me, but the Pistons have a really long playoff game losing streak right now. And look, if you could go into whatever series you're going to go into with momentum coming right out of that play-in game, I'm feeling a little bit better that that streak might end because
Yeah.
I know they've beaten the Knicks. I'm a little worried the Knicks would sweep them when
Yeah.
push came to shove. I'm a little worried about it. And then that's just another four games to tack onto that losing streak. I would love if they make the playoffs to win a dang playoff game. That's where I'm at right now. I don't care about the series. Just win one. Give me one. So there's my selfish reason for liking the play-in.
Oh man, I think yeah, I mean, I think Cade Cunningham obviously plays well in Madison Square Garden, but I think playoff games there would be a different beast. But I think they could be up to the challenge. And I would be pretty disappointed if they got to a playoff series and got swept. Like I think that this team has some they just find ways to win. They've been in so many close games, and obviously the playoffs are a different setting, which they don't have experience with. But I think overall, hopefully they get at least one. I think I almost want to say like two, like push a series to six in the first round is what I'd be hoping for.
That would be a huge win, I think.
Yeah.
No two ways about that. Two, pun intended. Not really, but I want to take credit. This is from our guy KDA 1024. Says, will Asar Thompson continue to be utilized as a primary ball handler to start the game will his ball handling duties continue to increase? What do you think?
Yeah, we talked about this a bit in our last episode where Wes, you made a great point that Asar is getting a lot of on-ball reps, but he's not really generating a lot of scoring off them, either for himself or others. He kind of gives the ball and then goes into another action from there. So I think I'm interested to see that when the Pistons come back from the All-Star break. Like, is Asar trying to do more to generate offense? Although, like, he can bring the ball up and start actions, but I guess just will he be told to, I guess, hunt his shot more, drive to the lane and open things up? So I don't know. I think the other thing to keep in mind with this is, like, as Dennis Schroeder gets more and more interesting, or more and more comfortable with this team after he was acquired at the trade deadline, like, does that take anything away from Asar's on-ball reps? I don't really see a reason that it would, but maybe it could. So I I think the Pistons would be in, like, better suited to give Asar some of those opportunities, especially when, in my opinion, they don't have a lot to lose right now, just to see what he can do and get him some of those game reps. But in general, I think the most interesting part behind this is, like, what you brought up, Wes, to see if he actually tries to, like, create more play finishing opportunities as opposed to, like, just being a play finisher off the ball himself.
And a quick shout out here to Order of the Blazing Horse popping in the chat. Appreciate you. I agree. Obviously, I'm naturally really curious to see what that's going to result in. So if you guys missed last week, it's just the fact that Asar Thompson, over the past 5 games, as he's taken on more of this ball handling duty, the percentage of his field goals that have been assisted rather than unassisted. So the percent of his field goals that are assisted have actually increased by about 8 or 9%, which is shocking for a guy that's having the ball in his hands a lot more. So really just speaks to the type of ball handling that he's doing. And with that, just to kind of build on it, I do really think it's a stretch to say that Asar Thompson's been a primary ball handler at any point this season, but even over the past few games where he's on this hot stretch, he's not the guy. He's not the guy that the team is looking to make a play. He's not the guy that the team is looking to set up the offense. At most, Asar Thompson has been used as a guy where if the defense is pressuring Cade Cunningham, that he can be the pressure release. So Asar will bring up the ball, make the first pass, get the offense going, right? Motion-wise, make the first motion and action and go from there and build off of it. Occasionally he's getting some pick and roll, and then the rest of this ball handling is just pure transition, grab and go, or as an outlet in transition, which is always something that he's done and flashed the ability to do. So if anything, this is a secondary ball handler type of role. I'm not trying to diminish it, but I'm also trying to make the distinction that Asar Thompson's not acting as a point guard. He's not acting as a primary initiator, and they're not asking him to, which is good because that's not really where his strengths lie. So a guy like Jaden Ivey, when he was healthy, he was playing this kind of pressure release role, right, when he was out on the floor with Cade, and then he'd go to the bench, and then he'd be the primary ball handler. So we've never actually, to my knowledge, I don't remember. Maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall Asar Thompson getting any of that type of reps. He's always next to another initiator, another actual guard who can settle things down if we need. Because the other thing with Asar is his handle is a little stiff. He doesn't create space super well, especially laterally. He's very bursty, which is obviously awesome. So he's good at getting downhill pretty quick. But all this is to say, I don't think that he has, the Philly game's a great call out. So they did use him as more of a point guard in that Philly game. And I'll also point out that legitimate point Asar Thompson minutes, that was an experiment that started in the first half against the Philadelphia 76ers and ended right at halftime. They went away from it really quickly because it just wasn't sustainable. JB picked up on it pretty quick. So long story short, Asar Thompson, yeah, as Philip Binder says, pressure release valve, guy who could take some pressure off Cade Cunningham, who could be a secondary ball handler, can get the team into the set, right? And just move on from there without being asked to do anything additional on top of that, like Schroeder, like Cade, like Ivy had been asked to do. That's been Asar's role, and I think he's doing really well with it. We'll see if the offensive production, his scoring, keeps up. I don't know if it's sustainable. I hope it is. Don't know for sure, but that's what I'd say. So I wouldn't want to put that type of role, I suppose, on Asar Thompson, especially right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think after we went through that stretch where there wasn't really a secondary initiator outside of Cade and someone that can take that role on when Cade was off the floor, and Marcus Sasser was thrusted into that role and did okay at times, but it wasn't the clear role for him. So I think bringing in Schroeder definitely takes some pressure off some of these other guys who might be just not best suited. But I think Asar, like, you have him out there on the floor to play defense and really be that like athletic bursty guy like you mentioned. And I think if he's able to take some on-ball reps away from Cade, like, and release a little bit of pressure, like Philip mentioned in the chat, I think that's all you can really ask him to do, and like hope those skills develop over time. But yeah, I'm not sure he's ever going to be that like primary number one ball handler. If he is, and especially with the Pistons, I think it would be within bench units, but I think they'd be best suited to have someone else that can dribble the ball on the floor as well.
And it's just fun, right? So we're watching Asar Thompson kind of in the role that most people assumed he'd eventually get to on draft night, right? He's a play finisher almost exclusively. He's handling a little bit of secondary ball handling duties. He's a fantastic defender, and he's just a menace in transition. Whether that's going to stay at 15, 16 points per game for the rest of the season or the rest of his career, I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch. Maybe it's sustainable. Again, I have no idea. I hope that that's where it stays at. It may not, but I hope that that's where it stays at. The point is, his role right now is, it looks repeatable. The role that he's playing looks really repeatable. He's excelling in it. And that's just exciting. It's fun to watch. So these past 5 games are certainly the best he's played as a pro. And hopefully now he can stack those games, right, going down the back stretch of this year.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, hopefully the All-Star break didn't mess with any momentum or anything, but yeah, he's definitely playing the best basketball that we've seen, and just come back, hit the ground running. You have some winnable games coming up, and you have something to play for. So I think that will help be a driver as well. So yeah, excited. He's like honestly one of the most interesting players to me to watch over this last stretch as well, just to see what he can grow into and where he fits in, I guess, especially when you don't have Ivy out there right now. So yeah, I think Asar, you might see a little bit more ball reps, but I think it will be similar to what we've seen going in this past stretch as well. And hopefully like the addition of Schroeder just takes a little bit of pressure on him having to do that and not being thrust into it as like a last resort in that like Sixers game like you guys were mentioning.
Speaking of point guards that have played for the Nets, Blake, I want to beat you to it. I don't know if you were already planning on bringing this up, but someone in the DVB comments did want to express their congratulations to Killian Hayes to getting a 10-day contract with the Brooklyn Nets. So I know that you've just had a habit recently of bringing up Killian Hayes. Wanted to beat you to it, Blake. That's all that was. Do you have any Killian Hayes thoughts? I mean,
no. I mean, yeah, I'm excited for him. Let's see how he might be playing tonight as we're recording this on Thursday. We'll see what happens there. Also, and I don't mean to do a little bit more of a somber side, but I'm so bummed out for Bojan, man. Like that Killian was signed after Bojan was waived and it was announced he needed season-ending surgery. I feel like it's kind of near the end for him, which is just like it's just a bummer. He was so good in stretches for the Pistons and obviously didn't fit with the timeline and didn't play defense and everything, but I enjoyed watching him. So I just hope that he can make a full recovery and maybe we can see him back somewhere next season, hopefully.
Foot injury for a taller, heavier dude in his 30s is just tough too. So yeah, I'm with you. Rooting for Bojan. This was a good question from Vugrenic. Hopefully I said that right in the DBB comments. It finally happened, Blake. We got a Bobby Klintman question. So he wants to know what's going on with Bobby Klintman. Is he part of the future for this team? And would you consider him to be young and good enough to maybe pass on keeping multiple of the draft picks that the Pistons will spend in the next year or two? So essentially, is Bobby Klintman a guy that you're factoring into the long-term plan right now?
Yeah, just to add some color, like he's pretty much all of his minutes, other than like a couple garbage time appearances, have been with the Motor City Crew. So I just pulled up those stats. He's played 20 games in full, averaging 10.5 points a game, shooting 24.5% from three, 3.5 assists per game, 6.2 rebounds, and 1.2 stocks. So definitely not like eye-popping numbers. He's not dominating the G League or anything like that, but you also have to consider he was coming back from an injury, missed a lot of time to start the season, so came on a little bit slow. I'd say in general, like I wouldn't bank on him being a part of the future, but I think he's a guy that you're good with keeping in your building and letting him develop for a little bit and seeing what he can become if he can carve out a role on the Pistons. I think his contract is like non-guaranteed, but it's a standard NBA deal. So I know there's belief there. I think it might just take some time. And I think that was always the case with him. Like what you were going to expect, the injury set things back a little bit. So I would give him I'm not giving up on him after this season by any means. I think he's a guy that you keep in your organization for at least a couple seasons, maybe even 3, to see if he can develop and play into a role, because the archetype that he has is a player that the Pistons need. Heck, really any team could use a player with that archetype, a tall guy who can shoot threes, defend a little bit, and he flashed some good passing in the summer league games as well. So I just give it some time. I don't think he's necessarily a part of the future. Like if there was a trade on the table and you had to include him, I don't think it's a stopper by any means. So overall, I'd say just needs a little bit more time, but I don't think he's part of the quote unquote core that we refer to, which may or may not even be real.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing with Bobby Klintman. I like Bobby Klintman. I like him a lot. I liked him in the draft. I liked him the year previous in that draft as well. I think he played really well in the summer league. He's had really nice moments in the G League. This is a second round pick. Okay. And yes, it was an early second round pick, but this is a second round pick. Second round picks, most of the time, of course, there are Jokic's and Isaiah Thomas's and guys that far exceed this, but most of the time, what you're hoping for out of a second round pick is bench depth, or best case scenario, truly best case scenario, bench player. Okay. You're not usually thinking starter. You're not usually thinking guy that we are factoring into our, future plans in pen. At best, you're putting them in pencil. All right. So I think Bobby Klintman has shown a lot of intrigue. I'm very much interested in keeping him on for another year or two, seeing what he can develop into. Maybe he can be that forward you talked about, right? Guy off the bench who can be a little bit of like a Simone Fontecchio right now, right? Something along those lines. That would be great. That would be a fantastic outcome for Bobby Klintman. I honestly actually, like, honestly, I do think he can get there. My expectation for him is that he can get there. That's kind of the player I think that he is and he can be. But would I pass on other opportunities to keep a player among around the caliber of Simone Fontecchio? No, right? Wouldn't just move for peanuts. But if the right thing comes along, that's not something that holds you back, I should say. So I understand the excitement around Bobby Klintman. I feel it too. I thought, again, he played fantastic in the summer league. He's a good prospect. He's got a lot of tools. But at the end of the day, this is still a second round pick. So we can't, we as fans, and I fall guilty to this too, but we can't start penciling in these second round picks to big and fantastic futures when in reality, it's just so unlikely that they even become a bench player, much less a future starter one day or like the next Tobias Harris,
Yeah, I think maybe a good plan is like sort of obviously not the same player, but a similar role to what Marcus Sasser is. Like I think you can see Clintman at the end of the bench for this season, next season, and especially next season. I think there will be times where he will get opportunities, whether it's just how JB shuffles the rotation or if there are injuries, foul trouble, suspensions, whatever. Like I think he will get an opportunity to play, and then it's just about in those minutes, does he force JB's hand? Like you need to find a way to play me, which is really hard to do. But I think he's especially like the skill set he has, like he can go in and just catch fire and shoot it really well and just be a guy off the bench that you can go to. So I think overall, just maybe that Sasser-esque like minutes and just where he is like something you can maybe tab for Klintman.
I think Sasser's a fantastic comparison to make because think about like on the value proposition side. Think about what Marcus Sasser is and why it's not actually a waste. He's a very late first round pick. He's on a cost controlled contract for 4 years with team options. And he's a very good third point guard or third shooting guard if you're in a pinch. Better third shooting guard than he is a third point guard, but either position. Plus, he gives you a little bit of that positional versatility right there, right? Like, that's a good asset to have on that type of deal that comes along with being the 28th or 29th pick, whatever he was, right? Same idea here with Bobby Klintman. If you could get eventually third power forward, right, on the contract that he's on, you guarantee it next year. That's fantastic. That is great depth. That's a win. That's not a bust. That's not a waste of a pick. That's actually really good value for where that is. Like I know we all want superstars and we all want high level players, right? But those guys have a lot of value too. We've seen, of course, across this league this season, all the injuries that happen. Guys in those depth roles, really important. The ability of Marcus Sasser to not totally sink the ship and most games that he played after Ivy went down, that ended up being really important, So I don't think that these guys are a waste in that situation. That's kind of what I'm getting across. I think that's good value. It's not a wasted pick. And if that's all that Bobby Klintman becomes, that's a good thing. Great. I'd be happy for him. He's going to stick in the league a while if that's the case. Any final thoughts here before we go on to another question?
Just like I understand that we all want the Pistons to hit on some of those second round picks. Like I've said that myself, but I think sort of this archetype we're talking about, like a depth piece and maybe develops into a bench guy. Like I think that would be a hit as well. So more to come. I mean, the Pistons have a treasure trove of second round picks, so maybe it's someone that's not on the team right now. But yeah, no matter what it looks like, even if it's not a flashy role, I think it would still be a strong use of a pick if Klintman was there to just provide some depth.
All right, let's wrap up on these two questions here from our live chat. So the first one, this is coming from Order of the Blazing Horse, says, question for later, but if the Pistons make the playoffs and they get into a playoff series, what do you think the rotation is going to look like?
That's a good question. And Wes, do you know off the top of your head, like what JB's playoff rotate, like is he sort of that Tibbs guy? Like, do you think he shortens it to 8 or maybe goes to 9?
I don't know off the top of my head what he's done in the past, but I do know that the Cavs last year played about, it was usually a 9-man rotation. I remember we were having those conversations coming into the year that JB going 10 deep was a little bit unusual, which he's now done. Would not surprise me at all if he parsed that rotation down to 8, maybe even 7 on a given night, especially with the Cavs injuries that they dealt with last year in the playoffs. So that may be kind of a wild card factor for a 1-to-1 comparison.
Yeah. No, are we counting on Ivy to not be available or?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's. That's what I was
that.
thinking too.
I want him to come back. I feel like it'd be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I mean, same starting lineup, honestly, and I think the rotation gets shortened, and I think you might just see Stewart, Schroeder, and I think Ron Holland still has a role off the bench as well. So, yeah, I think in general, what that would be 8, Cade, Tobias, THJ, Beasley.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Beasley off the bench just because he plays so many minutes. So yeah, maybe that like 8 to 9. I was on the fence with like Ron a little bit, but I feel like you have to find at least 5 to 10 minutes for him just to bring in that like defense, I guess just like energy that he brings as well. Like, you get that from Stewart too, but I think having it with Holland as well, like maybe he's the one who gets minutes decreased or pushed out of the rotation as well. But I think in general, like if I'm shortening the rotation for the postseason, the one that I look to where I could see just being out of the rotation is Fontecchio, but who knows? Maybe JB sees a different way.
So it's funny. I had the exact same instinct that you did. Look, the Pistons, if they make the playoffs, like the actual playoffs, so they get into a playoff series, I'm with you. I think that they parse down that rotation from the 9 or 10 they've been playing to an 8 or 9. But that being said, they are still ahead of schedule, and JB has to weigh that a little bit. So there's a lot of value to getting Ron Holland playoff minutes. There just is. It's a different game. It's the same reason that it's going to be valuable for Cade to be in those high pressure situations, and for Asar Thompson, Jalen Turner, Isaiah Stewart, all these guys, right? It's the same reason that it would be important for Ron Holland to get out there. So I think if you're pulling one guy out of the rotation, it's probably Simone Fontecchio. You're likely not going to increase Ron Holland's minute load. It's going to be probably around the same, and you're going to take Tex minutes and put it to guys like Beasley, like Tobias Harris, right? And you're going to shorten down the minutes and the rotation that way. But I do think that it would be a bit of a disservice to not give Ron Holland that sort of exposure when you were not planning to have the opportunity to even put him in that situation, to put him in that position to grow and learn as a player when the season started, right? So the fact that they're overachieving is great. I think you still owe a little bit to your future selves to get Ron Holland this experience now. So I would think that he still plays.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And I know Ron doesn't get a ton of love in like the rookie of the year conversations or anything, but if that's a guy that is playing playoff minutes and like an important role for a playoff team, like that is more than you can ask for out of year one. And we know he has a ton to work on with his game as well. But I think he's looking like a real piece for this team in the future. And I think if the front office sees it the same way, just like you said, Wes, you have to find a way to keep him in there. So I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I would trim down or just remove from the rotation. I don't really see it, honestly. And I mean, Harry mentioned to do it with or without Ivy. I think even if you add Ivy in the mix, like maybe Holland's minutes go down a little bit and you can maybe everyone's a little bit here and there. But I personally don't think the rotation would change that much. Like maybe you just go 9 and Ron only gets a handful of minutes. And you don't need to rely on like Schroeder as much, but I think Schroeder would still play too. So it looks similar to me, even if you add Ivy in, I think.
I agree with you. So then the only thing that I would add is that the actual in practice rotations are probably always going to be a little bit in flux for the simple fact that the Pistons have 3 really foul prone players in SR Thompson, Jalen Duren, and Isaiah Stewart. So Paul Reed's going to get minutes. That's all I'm saying. So like when we say we're gonna shrink it down to 8 or 9, like really it might be 8, 9, or 10. Just because of that in practice. So this next one here, this is from KDA 1024, and it's kind of a combo question. Okay, because we also had one from KCP for 3 in the DBB comments, and I'll read both of these off, but they're getting to the same kind of thing. So actually, why don't I do our guy KCP for 3s first? So he says, Bryce and Omari on the Pistons Pulse. Shout out to the Pistons Pulse. We had a really great episode this week. But he said, Bryce and Omari talked about the next 2 off seasons and the cap space and budgeting that they could do on the most recent episode of the podcast. So what do we think is realistic? And do we think that we're heading to a summer that is basically just returning guys, right? Keeping Malik Beasley and not making any larger moves. And our guy KDA 1024, very similar question. So he says, if the Pistons can end the season with around 40 wins, do you see this team basically running it back? So coming back next season, virtually intact with Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Tobias Harris? Or would there maybe be larger, more wholesale type changes made? So what do you think we're kind of heading to with this offseason coming up? Is it going to be a little more quiet, or maybe are the Pistons going to make some noise?
Yeah, I think with the veterans here, I think you need to do whatever you can to keep Malik Beasley. He's mentioned he wants to be here. He told Langdon not to trade him at the trade deadline. Like, we know that. I know the cap situation can get a little bit tricky, but I just feel like there's going to be a deal worked out there. With Tobias, that one's interesting. Like, I don't see him getting moved before the start of next season, but since he only signed a 2-year deal, like his contract turns into an expiring next year. And I think what the Pistons are really maybe not trying to do, but working their way toward is setting themselves up for some kind of move. And if there is a second star you can go out and get via trade, then you can use Tobias Harris's expiring $26 million to get a big chunk of whatever it is that you're looking to do. So I think Tobias will be on the team. I think he's been impactful. I don't see a reason to move on from him right away, but that said, he could be a big piece in the trade market as well. Tim Hardaway Jr. is interesting to me because he's currently on an expiring deal. I don't know how much the Pistons would be willing to pay him. I think if you can bring him back on a reasonable deal, like, I would be interested in that. But you also have to consider he's turning 33 next month. And he's been streaky at times as well. So maybe there's an option on the open market or via trade that you can go out and get. But overall, I'd say only one of Malik Beasley, Tobias, and THJ are technically under contract for next season. I think I'm saying you're going to see 2 of the 3 of those players back, and I'm pretty sure it would be Malik and Tobias.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that odds are good Malik Beasley and Tobias Harris both come back. Especially just given the fact that they did not trade Malik Beasley at the deadline. So we know that Beasley went to Trajan Langdon and asked to stay. And we also know, because he obliged, that Trajan Langdon believes him and thinks that they could get to an agreeable number on that contract. So I would think that Malik Beasley's back. I would think that odds are good Tobias Harris is back because, as you said, he is under contract. But I will say that I don't think that the overachieving that the Pistons have done this year would incentivize me at least to just run it back. So I think that if anything, you've kind of realized that you can accelerate this timeline just a little bit. So, for example, Philip Binder, right? He brings up, are there any possible upgrades to the power forward position, right, this summer? I think that you have to look really hard at upgrading either the center position or a position out on the wing. And by doing so, thinking about moving to Tobias Harris with the contract that he has at $26 million into next year and it being an expiring, that's actually a pretty good asset in terms of salary matching, right? And the Pistons have guys like Fontecchio, who's at 8 as well. So, and Marcus Astor at 2 is just kind of like a little throw in, right? So the Pistons can put together a package. They're going to have access to more future draft picks this summer once that pick ideally conveys, right? Because they're going to hopefully make the playoffs here. I think that you're looking at, if I'm Trajan Langdon anyway, I'm looking at the 3 position, I'm looking at the center position, and I'm trying to see if I could maybe make something larger happen there. And I'm talking specifically about the 3 in the center because I think your upgrade at power forward is Asar Thompson. I think what you would ideally want to do is pair Asar Thompson with a real wing or more of a true kind of wing forward combo type guy, more so than what Tobias Harris is. So instead of what Tobias Harris is now, think maybe more like what he was his first go around with the Pistons, right? A little bit more of a score first guy, a little bit more of a true wing, even though you could play him at the 4. That's the type of player I think would look really good on this team next to Cade, next to Ivy, and next to Asar Thompson at the 4. So that would be, I think that regardless of how they finish the year, we've learned a heck of a lot about the guys that they have on this roster and that they're a lot closer than any of us really reasonably believed or thought we could believe to being a really competitive team. And so with that, see if you can make some upgrades. I don't think you run it back.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if that upgrade comes in the off season or during the regular season. I mean, I think ideally, probably the off season, just so you don't have to make a big shakeup and bring someone in while you're making a playoff push or whatever it is. But sometimes that's the way things go. I mean, we saw how this trade deadline went down. Like, a lot of these guys are not happy in their current situations. I don't necessarily think like the Pistons are going to go out and get, like a Kevin Durant out there, but I think there will be some name available that we might not think is necessarily available that the Pistons can go and get. And maybe it happens at the draft. Maybe we see them go into the season with a similar roster, but I think by next trade deadline, like there's some sort of move on the table. I'm just not sure what it is.
And look, it's not like we're talking about or thinking about getting, I mean, you brought up Kevin Durant, but like that caliber of superstar player anymore. The Pistons kind of already have that in Cade Cunningham. At this point, you're looking more of like that B level tier of stars. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be as high up on that totem pole as a guy like Brandon Ingram. You could be looking more like a Zach LaVine caliber scorer that just so happens to be out on the wing or at a forward position, right? Like that's the kind of thing that's worth exploring, worth investing a little bit in. Not literally Zach LaVine, but that type of star caliber, right? Because you're really just looking for a number 2 at this point to play off Cade. And that or a big that can actually play, block a lot of shots on defense, wreak some havoc in the steals department ideally too. And hey, if they could shoot a little bit or if they're also a good lob threat, that'd be a plus. I'd target the shooting though.
Yeah, or I mean maybe Ivy or Ron is your number 2, like already on the roster and you're just waiting to see what's going on there. And then maybe you try and figure out how to get Cam Johnson out of Brooklyn as like more of a complementary piece, so on and so forth. But
Yeah, that'd be a good fit.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think if you go and trade for a big, they probably won't pass their physical, and the trade would fall through. But yeah, we'll
Look, I
see.
know Philip here is joking by bringing up Anthony Davis. I would take Anthony Davis on this roster. He would be a fantastic fit at the if you can convince him to play center, which has been a trend in his career.
Anthony Davis on the Mavericks for like that half plus was like they looked
Electric.
incredible. Yeah.
And then of course he gets hurt right away. Hopefully he's coming back soon. I think his recheck date's coming up. Kyrie's too. But all right, I think we could close it down there. Blake, thanks everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Give the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, take us home.
Yeah, and another quick plug for our voice line. Feel free to give us a shout anytime. Call the number, ask a question, and you'll hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Korp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting this show. And shout out to you guys again for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.